We're going to start going through chapters 9 through 11, which is on organizing your speech. So there's 3 different chapters in this section that I'll be lecturing on. Make sure that you read each of them individually, but these are the foundations of public speaking as far as writing your speech goes and getting things created so that your speech will be seamless with the types of information that you need to have included for your audience's knowledge and their ability to follow along with you. So what we know for sure first is that the number of main points that you have included needs to be a consideration. We want these to be between 2 and 7. If you have more than 7 main points, it's hard for your audience to pay attention. If you have only 1 main point, then it seems like it's a long diatribe. So you need to have between 2 to 7 main points. You want to strategically order these with the most effective ones occurring at the first of the speech and at the last of the speech. So the 2 things that you think are the most important for your audience to remember, bookend those at the beginning and at the end. You want to decide on some sort of a logical organization for it. So we have options like chronological order, topical, spatial, causal, and problem solution. Let me go through each of those individually. So on a chronological order of organization, you're organizing it throughout time. So it could be the beginning of a process where, like, you're baking cookies or something and you get your ingredients together and you measure them out and then you put them on the baking sheet and then you take it out of the oven, so it progresses throughout time that way. Or it could be chronological in respect to the actual time of life. So it could be like, was born here, went to school here, married this person, divorced, whatever happens throughout the lifetime. So that would be chronological pattern of arrangement. The second one was the topical pattern of arrangement. Topical patterns of arrangement are what you would get if you did any sort of kind of spider diagram where you have a main topic in the middle and then you just branch out from that the different subpoints that could be related back to that main topic area. So they don't necessarily have a rhyme or reason. They're just like random things that associate with the topic. If you choose a topical pattern of arrangement, my suggestion is to do some sort of memory device with it. So either like an alliteration where you spell out the words like ACT, and A would be accountability, C would be control, and T would be trust, so then you could tell them something like, I'm going to teach you about how you need to act. And then your main points relate to those letters of that word. The other thing you could do is have it all start the same. I'm going to give you the 3 T's relating to trust, which is truth. I don't know, I would be making this up as I go along, but 3 other T's that would relate to that topic. So that's topical patterns of arrangement. The third type is a spatial pattern of arrangement. When we do spatial arrangements, it means that we organize it according to something that we could visualize. So for example, you probably heard people talk about the structure of a house before, how it has a firm foundation and then it has the walls and the roof on the top. So you could develop your speech so that it built into those structures. So you talk about the foundations of parenting, you talk about the pillars of support that you need to have included, and then you talk about the protections that come from, as a parent, and that would be your roof. So you could do this, with any sort of object that someone could somehow visualize. The fourth is causal. This is where we do a cause and effect sort of arrangement. So you're looking at the effects of something and what causes it. So you can flip them either way. You could choose to talk about the causes first and then talk about the effects, or vice versa. But that's a logical process that most of us enter into as we're thinking through things anyway. So causal pattern of arrangement works really well. And then the last one is a problem solution. Problem solutions usually reserved just for persuasive speaking, but that's where you would identify a problem and go into the specifics of that problem, and then you identify a solution and what can be done to solve the things that you outlined. So those are main point organizations. We also know with main points that they need to have similarity. So there's something called parallel format. And if you'll use parallel language, which is similar words or phrases at the beginning or endings of main point taglines, that tends to help keep your audience's attention. So what this means is, like, if I had a main point that talked about the accountability, the compassion and trust, or whatever those 3 things were with ACT, I could add a parallel format with that to encourage memory retention of the main purpose. So I add a similar word or phrase on the top of all of them. So I have accountability, I have trust, and I have compassion, and I have trust, right? Accountability, compassion, and trust. And I could say those are the 3 things that are needed in order to be exceptional human being, if that was kind of my main purpose. So parallel language could be, to be an exceptional human, you need accountability. To be an exceptional human, you need compassion. To be an acceptable human, you need trust. So act, and then those three things with that phrase that's exactly the same, that's added to either the top or the bottom part of your main point tagline. And repeating that throughout the body of your speech is going to help the audience remember, oh yeah, this is all to help me become a better person. The whole main point of the speech is to help me understand the effects of abortion, or the political landscape and the polarization, whatever your main point is with your speech. If you'll add that to your main point tagline, you'll have better memory retention. So that's called parallel format. We know that you also need to be thinking about creating similar time with each of your main points. So try to take up the same amount of time and space in your manuscript, and then you will be doing the same thing as you're speaking. Otherwise, it seems like things are more or less important just because of the time that you've afforded to them. Next, we're going to go through the connectives. These are your transitions. So we have signposts, bridge transitions, and internal previews and internal summaries. Those are the three different types. Signposts are words like first, next, now, also. Those are words that appear usually in sub-point categories, meaning you're just trying to connect ideas together. You're not trying to separate ideas from the speech out for your audience to pay attention to individually. So the bridge transitions are when we want to separate it out. This is where we take from somewhere else to somewhere else in the speech. So now that I've discussed plants, so I take that piece that I've just discussed, I will move on to water. So bridge transitions connect, and they also act as a memory device because they help your audience remember where you were, and they help them focus on where you are going. You want to use bridge transitions between your main points and between any point that you know needs to have a specific separate focus. And then the third is internal previews and summaries. For 10-minute or less speeches, you'll just have these appearing at the beginning of your speech and at the end. So in your introduction, it's going to be the fourth item down on your introduction. It'll be the last thing that you leave them with, which is the specific planning of what you are intending to speak about. If you create an overall idea of your speech, just like as if it was fruit in a basket and you had apples, oranges, and bananas, so like that's figurative for whatever your three main pieces of fruit are that you want to talk about in your speech, then your internal preview would be going to your audience and saying, okay, today I have this basket for you, and in it we're going to discuss apples, oranges, and bananas, right? So, put in your actual main points. Let's go back to the acting to become a better person. Today I'm going to tell you how to act, ACT, like a better person. And those three things are have accountability, have compassion, and have trust. So that would be an example, just like, the fruit basket. I'm presenting the basket to them, letting them know that there's something that's going to be inside, and I'm identifying each of those specific items. So the internal summary is exactly the same thing, just in past tense. Today I have told you that I've talked to you about fruit. I've talked about apples, bananas, and oranges, right? Or today I have told you what it takes to become a better person. I've explained that you need accountability, that you need compassion, and that you need trust. So that's is going to appear in your conclusion. It'll be the very first thing that you say after your signal to close. So those are the three types of connections. And just a note here, if you end up giving like a presentation that's 40 to 60 minutes long, some like a lengthy presentation, you'll probably need to break it out into smaller bits. And for each of those bits, you would have an internal preview and summary within each of them, because it's too hard for the audience to take and remember your content after an hour. You know this with lectures even. So having specific organization that separates it down into usually 10-minute-ish chunks is usually the best plan. All right, so let's go to the very beginning of the speech then and talk about the types of organization that you would need to do as you start your speech. So we know in the beginning of the speech we need to gain attention. We've got to do something that makes them feel like this is worth their time to pay attention to. Attention getters tend to be things like stories, quotes, like inspirational, like hypothetical experiences or actual experiences that you could give to your audience, startling statistics, anything that grabs their attention. What you need to know about your attention getter is that your nonverbals are going to be speaking as loudly as whatever it is that comes out of your mouth. So be very careful with your body language in these first 30 seconds and make sure that your attention getter sounds like something that would really grab their attention and that they could sink their teeth into. It's kind of like fishing. You've heard this with a hook before, right? That's what a lot of people call it in public speaking, is that it's a hook. Just like with fishing, you throw it out there, it's got to be something tasty enough that they'll actually grab onto it and you can hold them for the rest of your speech. So put some thought into those first 30 seconds and make it be something that's startling. And humor is something that people use, but know with humor that it's got to be topic related. If it's not topic related, then chances are you're going to lose your audience as soon as they recognize that humor wasn't part of the speech. The second thing that you do in your speech is you reveal your topic and your purpose. So what is it that you're trying to talk about and why? Why is it important? Why did you bring this up for your specific audience? Let's go back to the ACT thing. So if I wanted to, start out with some sort of an attention getter, maybe a personal story about when I was, I was inspired by someone else and I knew that I wanted to be a better person. I would have that as my attention getter. And then I would go into revealing my topic and say, so today I'm going to talk to you about how you can become a better person and what it would take for you to have the same type of experience that I did before. And those things that you can do are in your actions. And I would have like some sort of a hint. You remember that the main points were ACT. So actions, bringing that up at the very beginning, is going to show them and hint to them that I have a purpose. I'm going to teach them about something. And it'll put a little flag in their mind for when I bring it up in my internal preview. Then the next thing you need to do is establish your credibility. This is always important for the audience to hear. And the fourth is the goodwill. You can interchange those. If it's easier for you to reach out to your audience first, that's fine. Otherwise, you talk about yourself first. So you tell them why you're credible to talk about it. Why am I credible about talking about being a good person? And something that people do with credibility, if they're inexperienced, is they'll be like, I'm the best at being an amazing person. I've been working on this and I'm amazing. So let me tell you all of my amazing things. And if you do that and put yourself up on a pedestal, that's usually kind of a turnoff. You have to be very careful. There's a saying in public speaking, be the goat, not the hero. So even if you are an amazing person and have learned how to do those things that you're going to talk about, present it to your audience with credibility, showing your growth, not showing that you're the most amazing whatever that they've ever seen, right? So credibility has to be said so that they know they can trust you, they know that you've gone on that journey. And then goodwill is why you have your audience in mind. Why can they trust that this content is for them specifically, that you created it with them in mind, not just to hear yourself speak. So let me give you an example of both credibility and goodwill. If I just got on and said the story of, my journey in life, and then I revealed that I was going to talk about becoming a better person and the actions that it takes to do that, then I would say with my credibility something like, okay, I am someone who will readily admit that my ego is clear and present in most things in my life. And I have to consciously train myself to think through my actions and how they are either self-serving or helping other people. And because I've struggled with this, I've put in a lot of specific work to try to really refine my ability to connect to others and to help them. So that would be an example of credibility where I'm speaking as the goat. I'm speaking as somebody that's had to learn and raise, right? And then I would bring in the goodwill. And I know all of you here watching this video have desires to be the very best people that you can be. I know that you love it when you can connect to other people, when you feel like you're heard and you feel like life has reward. And because I know this about you, I know that you will want to learn how to become the best person that you can be so that you can attract the type of people that improve your life. So you'd say something like that. So it really feels like you're reaching out to your audience and you're telling them, I know this content is going to benefit you. And then the last thing you do is your preview statement. You're previewing the body of your speech, and I already talked to you about this. This is your internal preview, right? So we already had this in the last slide, but your internal preview would sound something like, so today I'm going to talk to you about how you can act, ACT, like the best person that you can. And the way that you do that is through your, I can't even remember the things that we're doing now. So your accountability, your compassion, and your trust. and somehow either create like a pause before each of those, or actually say like first accountability, second compassion, and third trust. So that is what's needed for every introduction. For your conclusion, you'll need to do these following things. There are 4 items listed. The call to action, which is the third of the fourth, is only needed for persuasive speeches. So keep that in mind right from the start. For all informative speeches, you just do the 3. So you need a signal to close. These are words like in conclusion or to summarize. You need an internal summary, which I had explained previously. So this would be my internal preview in past tense. I would say, today I have told you about how you can become your best person through acting, ACT, accountability, compassion, and trust. And you say it verbatim. You repeat those main points again specifically. And then if it's a persuasive speech, you would leave them with a call to action. You would tell them specifically what it is that you want them to do now. Now that you know this about becoming the best person that you can be, I need you to do 3 kind things for other people that are focusing on one of those 3 points, either accountability, compassion, or trust. You give them a specific action, something that they can start planning and trying to implement right away. And that is like in every persuasive speech. You need to give them the first step forward. And then for all other speeches, informative and persuasive, you end with a memorable ending. Your memorable ending should be something that really leaves them thinking. And in my class, I'm not going to allow you to say thank you at the end of your speech. Even though that would signal the end, I want you to put more thought into it so that you are really leaving them with something that they would want to applaud when you're done. Good things for memorable endings would be tying back up to the attention getter. So maybe you start a story in the beginning and you end it at the end. Or maybe there's like a statistic that's brought up in the beginning and you give them another statistic if they implement these things that they could look forward to. Quotes are often really good things that make them think. So, and really the key with any memorable ending is the nonverbal commitment that you have that it's over. And the way to create nonverbal commitment to end your speech is to have your voice intonation drop at least a full octave. Now you can choose to make that drop in one step, boom, or you can go boom, 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 so that it has 2 steps down until you end. So let me give you an example. I could use a quote here for a memorable ending. I would say something like, my favorite author is Edward Abbey, and I feel like he has wrapped it up best with his quote. He says, love flowers best in openness and freedom. And if that was my end, there's no way you would know that was my end, even though that's like a great quote to end with, and I was committed to it. Because I didn't drop my octave lower, you don't know that it's done. So I would say something instead like, Edward Abbey says it best in his quote, love flowers best in openness and freedom. And that octave drop, do, is going to let them know that the speech is over. And they will clap and they will feel like you ended on this like super memorable note. So put a little bit of thought into those last 15 seconds and put a lot of thought into the first 30 seconds. All right, so next we're going to talk about outlining the speech in specifics. So you've got your introduction, you've got your body, you know that you have to have those main points, and you have your conclusion. As you're organizing the speech, you want to order your manuscript and note cards the exact same way. So you have to create a manuscript, a word-for-word manuscript of your speech. As you're writing that out, use the same ordering that you would put on your note card. So if you're going to do like big I, little a, on down the line, do that same structure on your note cards. And what will happen is as you prepare your manuscript and you read through it a few times, your mind is going to remember that there's a section associated with like, 2I, little b, there's a section that goes there. Your mind's going to remember that pattern. So that will mean that you'll need less content on your note cards because they'll already be referring back to the manuscript that you prepared. You will never be allowed to use your manuscript in your speeches. I always look at your note cards and make sure that you haven't written it out word for word. You need to learn how to speak extemporaneously with your audience. Make them feel like you're connecting to them, like they're a real human being. And so it's imperative that you limit your content on your note cards and keep them short enough so that your audience is not distracted by you looking down at them, but long enough so that it will jar your memory back to your manuscript so you remember the content that you need to be preparing. You want to use the handout that I'm going to give you in class as a template as you're creating this. So you feel free to change it a little bit with, like, if you want to do different organization structure, or something else works a little better. I have some students who color code, which is totally fine. But overall, use that template to start with. That's the easiest way to make sure that you A, get all of the organization things in that you need to, and B, aren't going to be overloading your note cards when you get to them. And then you want to state your main points in complete sentences and in parallel format. That's usually something that you have to write out on your note cards or practice to remember, because you are adding, remember at the very beginning when I talked about parallel format, you're adding that specific phrase to the beginnings of all of your main points so that it's jarring your audience's attention and memory. So they remember what it is that they're supposed to be focusing on, and they remember the purpose of that. So write that both in your manuscript and on your note cards, and then make sure that you're clearly identifying your transition statements. And you're using bridge statements between your main points and signposts between the subpoints. That's the way that you would want to start. Some other tips with just your speaking outline is to make sure that you don't use any more than 3. You can have up to 3 note cards. If you have more than 3, that's going to give you too many things to fidget with your hands. So be very careful with that, and try not to write on the back sides of your note cards either, or they will be visible. Try to be very aware that if you have anything in your hands, you're more likely to have those as a distraction for your audience. So anything that I'm holding, doesn't matter what it is, I'm more likely to hold to my chest or to my stomach, and I'm more likely to fidget as I'm speaking. So be very aware of your note cards and the fact that if you're not super comfortable with them and using them in a natural way, they'll become a nervous adapter. The second thing is to use the same visual framework as you had included on your manuscript. That was included on the tip on the slide below. So just keep it as exactly the same as you can, just in limited format on your note cards. You want to keep your outline brief as possible, meaning if there's a story, for example, and you know the story, don't write the story on your note card. Just say the story about the time I went fishing with my grandpa, and don't waste space or energy writing that out. Trust yourself and the ability to present content in a real and genuine way. That's much, much better than memorized or reading ever will be. And then, if you can, it's just a tip, try for just 1 note card that's been folded in your hands. So possibly practice with the 3 note cards that have all of this stuff tagging back, and then get to the place where you can have a note card that's just folded in half. If you fold it in half, it's going to take up less space in your hand. And that would mean also that you've practiced enough with your speech that you don't need to be looking at your note cards very often. You can just glance down every once in a while. And the folded in half gives you 4 different surfaces. So you could have an introduction surface, like with all your introduction material. You could have 2 points on it, possibly 3 on the back. And then your conclusion really just should be the review part, right? So you probably don't need a whole side for your conclusion. Most of my students do adopt this, and it really does help your nonverbals to keep things out of your hands. It helps you to appear more natural, more confident. So it's definitely something to try if you can. So you would type up your speech, you would create your note cards up to 3, and you'd practice with those note cards. And then before the day of your presentation, you would practice a few times just with that 1 note card that was folded. So give that a try. And then make sure, though, that you're only practicing with the note cards that you're actually using in the speech. I see this a lot of times in class where students will come in and they're writing out their note cards. They didn't write it out beforehand. That usually ends with some nervousness because they'll lose their place. They won't remember where it was written on the card. You'll see them like glancing down really closely trying to see where that content is. So, definitely use the actual note cards that you practice with. And don't, even with the 1 note card rule, don't come to class that day and write a note card either. Use the ones that you were practicing with.